That, let me hand it over to Dr. Guha from Microsoft, tech fellow. He's been at Netscape, Google, OpenAI, and more recently at Microsoft. And his project on NL Web is, we are a big fans because I think MCP allowed us to convert any API into an agent. And NL Web's mission is to convert any website also in an agent. So over to you, Dr. Guha.
Thank you, Nanda. Thank you for having me. So let me try and set the context of what we are doing here at Microsoft. The idea is we've been through sort of three revolutions in personal computing. First was the introduction of GUIs. The second was the introduction of internet, and more recently, mobile. The idea of being able to converse with any application, any website in natural language is a very old one. Unfortunately, the technologies required for that were not quite there. Um, when ChatGPT showed up on the scene about 2.5 years ago, a lot of us assumed that in fairly short order, that is how we would be interacting with most websites. Unfortunately, it turned out that there were whole layers that are missing, and we haven't yet seen that kind of a revolution. NLWeb is an initiative from Microsoft. Everything that you're seeing here today is actually live. A bunch of the sites that you're going to be seeing are going to be going to go live to the public in the next few weeks. Everything is open source, and what we are trying to do is to let me just show you a few demos. Imagine that you go to there's a recipe site called Serious Eats. It's quite popular. Imagine you go to it, and instead of searching around and clicking around there, you can start doing things like give me recipes for spicy, crunchy snacks that I can serve as an appetizer at a party. And that it goes, and it gives me back answers. A few interesting things. One is it's every one of the items that is received returned is actually an item on their site. So there's a fairly hard guarantee of no hallucination. The second point is that this is not just search; it's a real conversation. This is for a Diwali party, and so it can understand what Diwali means. It brings in knowledge about Diwali, and you get Indianish stuff, chart and save and puppies and things like that. And as I go down here, I notice that some of these items over here are, loaded nachos with ground lamb. Well, I'm vegetarian. Um, 25 years after the web or 30 years after the web, it still doesn't remember that I'm vegetarian. This one over here understands that I am vegetarian and then, does the right things based on that. Um, what is underlying here is not just, and then I get, of course, the only vegetarian recipes and so on. The we Not everybody needs to wants to have this kind of a UI. Some people would like to have a more conventional UI because their business model depends on it, and so on. And so here is the side backcountry. Give me jackets that I could use to go hike, hiking in Yosemite in December. And this not only gives me it brings to knowledge about December and the weather in Yosemite and so on and so forth, but also allows the website to have a more traditional UI so that they can continue with their sponsored links and other such things. Underneath here is there's let me give you another example over here with let's actually go back to the backcountry example. Um, And what comes back over here is it's getting slower and slower, and it's it is a set of JavaScript objects. So one way to think of it is that MCP is like HTTP. It provides a transport. It allows a site to expose its methods, but an agent still needs to know exactly how to invoke the methods on every single site. Imagine one of the special methods a site NCP also sort of um, is targeted at you have a central intelligence, a chatbot, which can then reach out through these methods into these other tools, if you will. Our model over here is to try and distribute the intelligence so that you have every website, every application can become intelligent by itself and has agency and can negotiate and deal with other agents on an equal basis. Very much in the spirit of Ramesh's Nanda. And for that, we need, on top of the HTTP, we need an HTML-like layer, one which actually specifies what the payload is. So in this case, the payload, the query that comes in is natural language queries. And the thing that comes out is a structured form, which includes, in this case, things like the actual schema.org object that each of these things corresponds to. This is just the beginning over here. We are, it's not only is it open source. There's two different things about NLWeb. One is the set of the protocols that we are trying to figure out how to standardize, much along the lines of how we did it with schema.org. And the second one is an actual implementation that people can take and start playing with, and so on and so forth. With that, I think I'm 12 minutes off of 15, so I'll take any questions if there are.
That's fantastic, Guha. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about why this mechanism will make it easier and the role of RSS and schema.org.
Sure, absolutely.
And if you had the luxury of, I know you're the inventor of these things, if you had a luxury of inventing one more thing that will make the web even more compatible with AI agents, what would that look like?
Sure. One of the big goals that, uh, if you look back at 94, 95 in the web, there was this thing called the homepage. Everybody had a homepage, and people looked at a homepage and said, I want one of those, right? We have a lot of excitement about AI, but still, you can go, unless you go to one of the four big AI portals, you could spend an entire day or entire week, and many people actually, believe it or not, spend an entire month without encountering an AI. At the same time, there is a huge opportunity for improvement in the way in which we navigate uh, sort of the space of information on the web. And so the idea is if we could, the way this thing is powered is the following, which is if you take a look at one of these recipes over here, it looks like a normal site. But underneath here, what we have is, if you look at it in the schema viewer, all of these sites, roughly 50% of the pages in the major search indices now have this markup called schema.org, which is a semi-structured markup. And it also turns out that the LLMs understand this markup language incredibly well because they've been trained on it. So leveraging that, we make it utterly trivial. In a matter of, one of our partners, TripAdvisor, saw the first, got access to the GitHub repo on a Tuesday, and by Thursday they had a version up and running. And we can make it, as tooling develops, we can make it even shorter. Now, the part of the reason why we made everything open source is because we need the investment of sort of hundreds of thousands, if not more, developers to take this forward. I see this a lot like how the web was in January of 95. There were only tables, there was no JavaScript, there was no CSS, there was no nothing. And yet collectively together, everything got developed and the same ideas over here.
So do you see a future where this is almost a bridge, right? Today we are creating a website, and then from the website we are going to an AI agent.
Yes.
Much like previously we would create websites and then created a mobile experience separately from that. Do you think
Yes.
the order will reverse and we will create agentic websites first before worrying about creating human readable websites?
There's two parts of it. One is it what does it mean to be a website might itself change. So we were having a conversation with some senior people from TripAdvisor, and the point was that I need some, when you're taking a trip, um, you want something to come along with you which knows everything. And this unit called a web page is a very convenient unit. Before this unit showed up, we had an internet which had Usenet, and then we had other things, and we in that unit of a web page with links to navigate around and drop down menus and so on did good for about 30 years. It's time to move on further. So I think the idea you will have, whether you call it an agent which you talk to, whether other agents talk to, etc., is going to be different. It's going to be an endpoint which is going to support communication, which is much more friendly to human beings.
Mhm.
And I don't, yeah, this whole thing is a transition. uh, NLWeb is a transitionary thing, but like many other things, it may not be just. It may just stick around. One hopes. We'll see.
Yeah, let me ask a related question. I know more questions are coming up in the chat. Please feel free to type them in the chat, and I'll try to take some of them for Dr. Guha. Uh, as we discussed in our prep call, Guha, I think there are very few projects that are thinking about consumerization of AI agents or agentic web, and this may be one of the prime examples. Project Nanda, of course, is thinking about consumerization as well. How do you see that playing out, the consumerization aspect of it versus enterprise? Of course, a lot of your work requires enterprises to change their websites to do this, but hopefully anybody can, when they create their website on Wix or Squarespace, can have this as a plugin. How do you see this playing out, enterprise versus consumerization, and overall overview on agentic web being consumer first or enterprise first?
Um, I think it's going to depend. There are some technologies like the adoption of PCs was enterprise first. The adoption of the internet of the web was consumer first, and traditionally consumer uptakes have been the consumer world on the web is very, very different. The economics are different, and the marketplace is different. I think you need to show people we're in an interesting position where a lot of the consumer websites are concerned about being disintermediated. If we can, and there's an interesting opportunity where if we can give them a value proposition where it doesn't take much effort for them to put this up, right? And they have to see returns. Um, I see a question about from Raghubala about concept of semantic web, etc. Well, guess what? It might not have been called semantic web, but schema.org is driven by all of that stuff, right? And schema.org is now there on 50% of the web pages. I can pull up a random page on Walmart or anywhere, it's there. And the key is that if you tell people they should do something because it is a good thing for the world and this is a grand vision, etc., they won't. If you give them something where they get some return immediately, they will. And the idea here is that um, if Serious Eats or an All Recipes or a TripAdvisor and an Eventbrite can see immediate value for their users for a very low investment, they are very likely to do it. And we have to find that path of incremental slope where it's interesting. It also needs to be permissionless, which is that they shouldn't have to do a deal with a chat GPT or a Gemini or a Perplexity in order to get their content, in order to have this functionality. It should just be without. There was a demo from the Stanford, some bunch of Stanford kids who built an interface like this for Stanford's Explore, which is how you find courses on Stanford. And so that is the kind of thing that should be possible very easily, and then it'll take off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think we got to the question of the enterprise first
I don't know the
aspect of
answer. I think there's an enormous amount of investment in the enterprise context.
that.
One of the things that agents do incredibly well is to help people navigate complexity, and enterprise applications have become kind of complicated.
Right.
And On the other hand, enterprise adoption tends to be on a slightly slower pace because it's bigger enterprises. It goes through the IT department and so on. So it's going to be an interesting. I don't have an opinion of. I don't know which one it's going to be. My personal experiences have been completely on the consumer side, and so I'm driving it from consumer applications. Yeah.
Yeah. I know the Nanda community has a lot of innovators, a lot of entrepreneurs,
Yeah, would
a lot
love
of
to.
investors here. What would you say to them? Should they bet their farm on NL Web?
They
And
do not bet their farm on anything. I never bet my farm on anything. But the point is, how can we reduce the cost of the bet, right? So that it's not betting a farm, but a much smaller investment, go to the GitHub repo, download it, see what you can build today. There's simple adapters. There's a hello world thing there where you can point it at a bunch of RSS feeds, and it'll learn that, and then you can ask it questions, and you can do things, and and stuff like that. It should be fun. Put it up there on a website. The cost has been optimized. You can use it with any vector store. It comes with a few vector stores. You can use it with any model. You can run it anywhere. I can run it on my laptop, and so it's cheap. It's easy. It gives you something to show off. It's your new the 2025 version of, look, I have a homepage.
Yeah. Let me take a few questions from the chat here. We have almost 100 people online now from different time zones. I think there's some questions about how will this play with MCP, and I'm going to add to that question about A2A, things like this lightweight indexes like NANDA quilt registry. Just share with us kind of your thought process there.
The MCP story is very MCP is at a in the stack. MCP is at a lower level in the stack. It's MCP is a lot like HTTP. MCP basically goes and enables the server to say, here are my methods, and here are their signatures. It doesn't assume that the thing that is exposing the MCP endpoint is actually intelligent. NLWeb goes on top of that. NLWeb says, let me actually put some intelligence there so that MCP puts all the load of figuring out what methods to call and so on the caller. Over here, this goes at a higher level and says, I'll figure it out. Just ask me natural language. And I'll give you back my responses in a standard form so that you can aggregate them, and you can do all kinds of things with them, and so on and so forth. There are things that are coming into the NLWeb layer, like if I give you my content, can you please use it this way to make sure that it is displayed this way, and here is a license with it, and here is how long you can keep it, and all of those kinds of things, which it's a lot like as I think Kevin Scott put it very nicely in his talk at Build. MCP is like HTTP, NLWeb is like HTML, and if you look at the relative complexity of HTML versus HTTP, you can see that HTML evolved for many, many years after HTTP was essentially frozen. So that's it. And then also every NLWeb server comes with an MCP server, so you don't have to worry about that. So you put NLWeb, you're already in MCP. You're in the MCP world. Is NLWeb equals LLM plus MCP client? Yeah, it's a simplification. There's a bunch more stuff to it over there in terms of processing. I suggest you look at the I don't want to. I'm very suspicious of one-liners. Yeah.
And so talk a little bit more about
the quilt. This is a really interesting point, which is we're going to require things like NANDA, which know who to ask what question, right? And the question is, if you have, there's about 50 to 100 million sites which support schema.org, and in very short order, they can all become NLWeb endpoints. And when you create an NLWeb, what you get is an agentic endpoint, which exports a single method, which is ask, where you can, and then there's a couple more methods coming, which is like do, which takes a method and in natural language and gives you back a response. Now this endpoint and all the interfaces I showed you are just thin JavaScript layers that are talking to this endpoint. But it need not be JavaScript that a human being is interacting with, that is taps into this endpoint. It could be another program, another agent, which is tapping into this endpoint. And there could be a network of them doing interesting things, right? Now, the question is, in a world with a million of these things, we need a place to ask, look, I'm trying to get this thing shipped from Delhi to Kathmandu. Who can do this for me, right? And there will be a need for that. And that, I think the architecture of those beasts are going to be different from the architecture of what we think of as search engines. Search engines essentially make a copy of the web or the copy of whatever they are searching over of the corpus, and then they essentially use different algorithms to search over them. This one is going to be different, which is it's going to have knowledge about the what each of these corpora contain and what those agents can answer, because those agents also will have knowledge about the world, about it, and hopefully some reasoning capabilities and so on. It's going to be fascinating to see where that develops.
Fantastic. I'll ask the last question, which is from it's from, let's see. It's from Akram Sharif, one of our co-authors at NANDA. And he's asking a very important question, which is kind of multi-turn agentic planning. And also the question you received from Maria yesterday from our team, which is the actions as opposed to queries. So if you can kind of share your thoughts on that.
There is a natural multi-turn conversational thing that is built in over here that I showed you when I said, it's for a Diwali party and so on and so forth. That's another big, it's not just a natural language. The bigger thing is actually memory and context. The web is, too many sites are stateless. It's like the movie 51st Date. You go back there, they've completely forgotten what you've done. This takes it just out of the box. You get this experience where this thing has memory and state. Actions is much more a more involved topic. We're in the process of putting in actions, and actions meaning not just go buy something or go put something in a cart, which results in a state change, but what is there in NANDA today is the rough analog of htdocs stage of the web, where you could display static documents. One of the big innovations that happened was when Rob Mickle put in CGI bin, where you could execute arbitrary functions. Right? And in fact, most of the functions that are executed arbitrarily are to just don't have a side effect. But that mechanism to be able to invoke and execute arbitrary functions in response to a natural language statement by a user is something that is going in the next week or two. And subscribe to the GitHub repo, and I'll sometime in the next day or two we're going to put something over there about how what the thinking is, and everything there is going to be iterate very, very, very fast. But I think once we get there, then we can actually see. I mean, the hope is to see a Cambrian explosion of agents, because you can now make it easy for somebody to put up something that is genuinely useful, not just a curiosity, across the board.
Yeah. Project Nanda and Microsoft NL Web are going to host some hackathons, virtual hackathons, in the coming days. And given both efforts have an ethos in thinking about consumerization and making it easy to deploy, we would love your comments, your participation. Follow the GitHub for NL Web, follow the GitHub for Project Nanda, and stay tuned for some more amazing features, more amazing capabilities. And Dr. Guha, I'm just curious what the developers on this call are going to go build with this.
I'm very curious too. Yes.
Thank you
so
very much.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.
Thank you. So we're just going to move on and talk a bit more about many of the opportunities in this space. If Mahesh, you're ready, we're going to come back to Samuel Sharaf because of some.
Actually, Ramesh, I'm ready if you want me to go now.
Excellent. All right, fantastic. Then let me switch to your slides. Good timing.